Thank you for your patience, ladies and gentlemen. Now we have a better room, cooler, and we're so lucky today. We just have an opening ceremony for American Leadership Institute, but now we're so lucky to have our beloved Boston City Council, our old friends, or new friends, or whatever, younger friends, and Ed Flynn to give us the first speech about how about the leadership, how about participate yourself, devote yourself to the society, to the community you love. Now, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please welcome Mr. Ed Flynn.
Thank you. I'm honored to be with you this afternoon and talk about leadership and the importance of strong, positive, ethical leadership, whether it's in government, academia, the nonprofit community, or just in your community or your family. As the former Boston City Council president, and as someone that served 24 years in the United States Navy, including overseas in various locations in the Persian Gulf, leadership to me is not something I necessarily read in a textbook, although I have taken courses in leadership. And it's not something I studied per se on the computer. It's something that I lived in my life. And I learned a lot of invaluable lessons about leadership through the military, through my community, through serving as city council president. And what I always tried to do as a leader is lead by example. Whether that was at the very junior rank in the military, even if it was just cleaning the floor, I would want to make sure that when I was assigned a duty such as that the floor would be immaculate. As I rose in leadership positions in the military, it was more about your subordinates and making sure that they are trained and that they have the skills and education to be effective leaders. And also about their family as well, making sure that their family is supported while their husband or wife is overseas. If you don't support the family in an organization, you have failed as a leader. You can't be an effective leader if you don't address the role of the family. And I say that because you want an employee that's highly trained, responsible, but you also want to ensure that that employee is comfortable with his or her home situation. And that's what an effective leader does, in my opinion. As a frontline worker, everybody really is a leader. Even if you are sweeping the floor, you are a leader. You might not supervise anybody, but people are looking at you and seeing if you give that job 100% of your effort, if you are committed to that task. And what happens if you are committed to that task? People will give you more responsibility. And that happens throughout life. But as a leader, you have to ensure, in my opinion, you have to ensure that any assignment you get, you have to be held accountable and responsible, and you can't pass the buck. And I have done that in my life, in the military a couple of times. I think we all have, and it's a lesson I learned. I was assigned when I was in Guantanamo, I was assigned to supervise a group of people, and one of them did something that they weren't supposed to. And my boss said to me, "What happened to this young person?" And I said, he made a mistake. He wasn't focused. He wasn't trained. And he should have known better not to do that. My supervisor didn't accept that as an answer. My supervisor said to me, Flynn, you field as a leader because you're his supervisor. Don't pass the buck. Don't pass the blame. It's your fault. It's your responsibility. And that's a lesson I learned, is every person that you work with, especially that you supervise, you're responsible for them. You're responsible that they're trained, they're educated, they're supported, they have the tools to be effective. And sometimes it means to challenge your subordinates. And it's not always necessarily going to happen where the person likes you personally. What's more important than that is the person respects you, and that the person, your subordinate, has the tools to be effective. That's one lesson I learned in the military, and there's others, but also during the pandemic, I had the opportunity to serve as the city council president for 2 years. Boston was actually the first city to have a town hall meeting to discuss COVID-19 and the pandemic. This was actually before it even arrived into the United States, or was just arriving in the United States. And I know that because I have 3 wonderful members of my team that speak Cantonese and that speak Mandarin and that are from China, and that they studied what was happening overseas as well. And they said to me, Ed, what's going to happen is, especially now with this pandemic coming to the United States, the Asian community, the Chinese community is going to be blamed for it. The Asian community across the country is going to be blamed. And I was thinking to myself, how would they know that? And it was based on their experience in life. And as a leader, I had to trust the young women that worked for me. One of them is here, is Melissa, that does an exceptional job. So we held this hearing. We held this town hall meeting at the Josiah Quincy School. Many of you know the Josiah Quincy School in Boston. It's actually a school predominantly for many Asian students. And everyone was speaking, and then the most remarkable comment I heard that night was from a young woman. She was a high school student, and she went to Boston Latin High School, which is one of the best high schools in the country. And she raised her hand and she said to me, she got onto the train to go to high school. I don't know where she was coming from, maybe Charlestown or maybe Chinatown, and she was going over to Boston Latin. But when she got onto the train, everyone on the train, or mostly everyone on the train, got up. And they were sitting down at the bench on the train. They got up and they left the train because they associated her with the pandemic. And she was telling me this story. And what she wanted was to ensure that we knew the impact that this pandemic would have on the Asian community. And as a leader, there was no textbook on how to respond to a pandemic. There was no textbook how to communicate. One of the professors was talking effectively about communication, whether it was through traditional communication or social media. But what was important was how to communicate effectively to my constituents, and I represent the largest Chinese community in Boston, probably in New England. But what was important for me is to communicate effectively, not just to my constituents, but to the Asian community across Massachusetts. And how do I do that? I only speak English, unfortunately, but the members of my staff speak Cantonese. they speak Mandarin. They were able to effectively communicate our message of don't blame the Asian community in America for this pandemic, even though I think our country did do that. We saw violence against Asians, including in Boston, but across the country. Violence against Asians go up. We saw hate crimes go up. And it was important to continue to speak out and educate people as a leader, as a neighbor, as an elected official, about trying to bring people together and not be divisive. And I was thinking back to my service in the Persian Gulf. I was on a ship, but I was in a small country also called Bahrain with many Asian American. This was before the pandemic. But I was thinking to myself, here they are, these young men and women, and they're willing to give up their life for our country in the Persian Gulf, if necessary. And at the same time, years later, during this pandemic, their grandparents or their parents or their aunt or their uncle are being subjected to hate and violence just because they're Asian, just because they're Chinese or any other ethnic nationality. So as a leader, many decisions you make are controversial, especially the higher up you go, whether it's in government or it's in academia, because a lot of the decisions that are easy are already made before they even reach you. And as a leader, I don't get to pick and choose, in my opinion, what issues I want to work on. I work on the issues that are in front of me that are having a significant impact on our city, on our country. So it's not always important to be popular when you're making a decision as a leader, but it's more important to listen to experts, to study the issue, to see how a decision you're about to make will impact the community. Does the community have the necessary resources to respond to a pandemic, to a cut in services, to a downturn in the economy? And then make your decision and stand by it and communicate your decision to residents in an effective way by being brief, by telling exactly what you believe in, giving people the facts, and not passing blame or passing the buck. And that's what I've tried to do as a leader in Boston, oftentimes making mistakes, learning from mistakes. But that's what a leader does. It continues to get back in the game after a mistake, learn from mistake, and try to provide hope, provide guidance to your constituents, to your colleagues in work. And I think that's what I've tried to do as president of the Boston City Council. And I would be interested, if anyone does want to comment later about any of my comments, they can reach me on social media, edforboston.com, or through social media, through Twitter, Ed for Boston, ed.flynn@boston.gov, as well as my email. So I do want to hear from residents and do want to hear from the Chinese community about some of the issues that are concerned to them and how I can be more effective as a leader here in Boston or across the country as well. So I will stop there, and I just want to say thank you to this wonderful Institute of Learning for giving me the opportunity to be here to highlight some issues about effective leadership, effective communication, accountability, responsibility. I hope these comments today this afternoon were helpful. Thank you very much.
We are so honored to have our visiting professor from Boston International Business School, first lecture on the Leadership Institute. So our president, Leadership Institute, will have a gift to our professor, Ed Flynn.
Yes.
This book is written by Fifi Lee, a very famous AI expert.
Okay.
And she's an expert in the congressional testimony on AI policies. Yes. And he gave the book to us and to you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
The name of the book is The World I See. Hopefully, we can get some second win from this book.
I think so. Yeah,
Especially leadership with AI.
Yeah.
Thank you.
AI and the leadership.
AI.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shall we?